Hello. Benjamin Franklin once said, "A penny saved is a penny earned." And as a hobbyist beekeeper, I want to save every penny I can. Today in our workshop, we're going to be building a nuke box. This is going to be the one we're building is going to be a medium 4-frame nuke. I'm going to be using some techniques that you may not know about, you may know about. But I'm going to be showing you step by step on how I build these nuke boxes. I'm going to be using a migratory cover, a disc entrance, box joinery, and a dado for a handle grip. Plywood bottom, and a dado or a rabbet for the frame rests. I'm going to try to demonstrate each one of these techniques as best of my ability. Stay tuned. Okay, the first step of our build process here is to get our lumber. For building a medium nuke box like we're going to be doing, you'll need to get yourself some 1x8. A 1x8 by 8 foot pine board will be sufficient. You can build these out of plywood, but I prefer pine lumber. If you're going to be building a deep nuke or high body, you would use 1x12 lumber and then rip it down to 9 1/4. So the very first thing we need to do is cut our 4 pieces, our 2 sides and our ends. The 2 common denominators are your sides. It will go no matter what size box you build. They're 19 7/8. So what we need to do is set up and cut 2 boards at 19 7/8. And since I'm building a 4-frame nuke, I need to cut 2 boards 7 1/2. We'll get set up and we'll do that now. Seeing that I'm just doing one box here, I'm going to cut each board separately and measure it out. When I build these boxes in bulk, I set up a guide and a stop, and I can cut these out in multiples and really quick. You can use a radial arm saw, you can use a miter saw, you can even use a table saw with a crosscut. Alright, now that we have our 2 ends and our 2 sides made, you would need to make your top. Cut your top out. I already have one built, so I'm not going to do it. But if I were to, I would take my 19 7/8, which I use 20 as my number for the top, add 1.5 inches to allow for these rails that slide down on the top of the migratory cover. The grand total measurement of 21 1/2. So you would cut that out of your 8-foot board as well. You should also have enough lumber to cut your bottom, which would be the 19 7/8. Now we'll set up and we'll start making the cuts on the table saw. Alright, I got the fence set from the blade, from the inside width of the blade to 7 1/8. That's what I do for medium boxes. So we'll cut the 2 ends and the 2 sides. do the part of the build, we're going to cut the box joints. This is the part that typically intimidates most new woodworkers. They're easy. I'll show you how I do them, and a little simple sled that you can build out of scrap wood. And all you'll need is a sled and a dado blade set. You can use like a Freud or Diablo dado blade set, such as this. Or you can go old school and use a wobble blade. Either one works just as good as the next. I'm going to be using the Diablo. So I'll get the blades out, get the blades that I need. I'll show you my sled here in a minute, how simple it is to put one together, and we'll go to the next step. Okay, if you're going to be using the Freud or Diablo dado blade set, excuse me, model number DD208, you will need both blades, inside and outside. You'll need 3 cutters, and you'll need 2 thick spacers that come in the kit. And I use one thin cutter or spacer. The reason being is this 3/4 inch lumber is just slightly shy of a true 3/4 inch, and I want a nice tight fit. So how we set this up, teeth facing towards you, the direction of the rotation. I do a spacer. It doesn't matter which order you do this. Cutter. Make sure the cutter's teeth face you. Another spacer. Another cutter. Offset the cutters from each other. Another spacer. Another cutter. And then finally the outside blade. That'll give us our proper thickness with the lumber that we're using. You do not need to use your big flat washer on your table saw. Just put the nut on and secure it well. Alright, the next thing you want to do after you get your blades installed is you want to do a test cut on the scrap board to make sure your pine is the right fit. Take one of your pine boards that you'll be using, and that's a perfect fit. Now we'll get set up, and I'll show you my sled that I use for making the box joints. This is my simple sled that I have made. It really is, there's nothing to it. It's just a scrap piece of plywood. The 1x is a spanner, or 2x4 on the back, and then my height chip out board on the face. Saw runs through right here, the saw blade. This is my guide to get me exactly the right distance from the saw blade for my box joints. These are the critical numbers. The height of your blade is critical. The cut width of your blade, the distance from your blade to the inside edge of your marker, your measurer. Those are your critical numbers. On 3/4 inch lumber, I use a 3/4 inch wide blade, slightly under, because most material is slightly under 3/4. Then I mark from the edge of the blade to the inside edge of the spacer here exactly, and I screw it in place. The sled has 2 runners on the bottom to fit in these grooves. You can rub a little beeswax on them, help it slide. It's that easy. There's really nothing to it. So the keys here to get started is we need to set the blade height at exactly 3/4 of an inch. Once you get the height of your blade set on a scrap piece of wood I use for testing, make your first cut. I'm going to demonstrate this on the scrap piece to start with. All you do is after you make your cut, you index it over that little spacer that you have and you make your next cut. Repeat that process all the way down to the Now what I typically do, we'll make 2 of these and I will test fit them together to make sure everything is perfect for my box joints. Once you have done that, now you can take your actual box pieces. You always start with the sides and you actually just start doing the ends. One critical thing is when you're flipping it to the other side, do not go like this. You just flip it straight over and repeat the cut on the opposite end. This is really your original cut. It was up against your block in here, your spacer block, to give you your 3/4 inch offset. So what you do now to make your end pieces is you flip that, drop that over your spacer, and what that does is that aligns the inside edge of the board exactly with the inside edge of the blade. I like to put a clamp on this. Clamp this board in place while I make the first cuts on my end pieces. It does not matter on your ends which way you start. I have a knot here So I'm actually going to start on the opposite end. Now that you've made your first 2 notches, all you need to do is slide that right up and over your spacer board. Just like that. That'll set you up for the next notch. Make sure there's no sawdust underneath your sled. That'll mess with your height of your cut. Okay, so what I like to do now is a test fit on my box joint before I go any further. Doesn't look bad. I could have been just a 30-second higher on my blade. I could go back and move that blade up a 30-second and recut all these box joints, and it would probably work out just a little bit better. If you can look right here, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. I'm down just a little, maybe about 30 seconds. It's not enough to really mess with anything though. So next thing we gotta do is cut the miter right through here, 3/4 inches wide by 3/8 of an inch deep for the frame rests. I have now set the dado blade up with a sacrificial fence. You'll want to make your dado on this end where the box joint is here on this shelf on this end. I don't know how to explain it, but you can get a visual. Again, it's going to be 3/4 of an inch down by 3/8 of an inch thick, so it'll be about half the width. At this point, you can actually choose which side you want as the inside and which side you want as the outside. This board really doesn't matter, so I'm just going to run it how it is. Alright, if you're still with us, we have now gotten the box basically done. Our 2 ends and our 2 sides with the box joints done and the dado done for the frame rests. It's a good time now. You can actually assemble this box, so I think that's what we'll do since I'm just doing one as a demonstration. We're going to need some wood glue, and then whatever your method is of nailing or stapling or screwing the joints. I'm going to be using an air stapler because it's quick and easy when I'm doing 20 or 30 of these at a time. Okay, so now we're ready for assembly. I like to set the box up kind of how it's going to go so I know which joints to glue first. How I glue them is I do that joint and this joint, which is the mating joint. I put glue on both surfaces. You could brush this out, distribute it a little better. I honestly don't feel it's necessary. The goal is just to get enough glue in there where once it sticks, dries, it's there forever. This is one of the strongest joints there is, similar to a dovetail. If you've made nice tight joints, it's going to take a little mallet to drive them all together. Just work your way around. I like to do the opposite end next. Personally, I like to put glue on both surfaces, on just the bottom of the box joint itself. Now you flip it up like this, and just again glue all your surfaces. Doesn't take a lot. You're going to get some squeeze out, but that's okay. Again, I glue on the side piece, the bottom of the box joint as well. You're going to get some glue drip in here. It's almost unavoidable. At this point, you may need to put a clamp on there if your lumber has any sort of bow to it, or just to pull it in as tight as you can get it. Check it with a square. I like to use a larger combination square for checking this. The box joints really help keep everything square as you're putting it together. What I'll do is, on a medium-sized box, I just do 2 nails on each side. One here, one here. Over here I'll do one here, one there. This is a 7/16 crown stapler. I'm using 1 3/4 staples. That joint done. So that box is built. What you'd want to do now is get 4 frames and check that box. I'll grab 4 of my medium frames. I use all wedge top bars. That's why you're not seeing any foundation in them. 1, 2, 3, 4 with a little space on each side. It's perfect. Next thing to do is I would let these dry, and then we can drill our hole for the entrance gate or the disc, or you can build the top. All you'll need to do again for the top is cut yourself your piece of your pine 21 and a half, I believe it is. Yes, 21 and a half. Get yourself some strips, pieces of pine. I like to make them about 1.5 inches. Cut them to the same width, which is 7 3/4. Glue, nail those on. There's your migratory top. Done. Then just get yourself a piece of 1/2 inch plywood to the dimensions of the box. Nail that on or screw it on. Done. There you go. There's your medium nuke box on a 4 frame. You can take this, and all you need to do to change the size is at 1.5 inches, the width of the frame, or 1 3/8 inches. So instead of being 7 1/2, you would add 1 3/8 or 1.5 inches, so 9. Or 9 7/8 would be your next one. That would give you a 5 frame box. Or just keep going or subtract if you want a smaller number of frames in your nuke. Again, this is a medium. On a deep, you instead of doing 7 1/8, I go 9 3/4. Everything else is essentially the same though. I do, like I said, these are for migratory tops. If you wanted to do a top that had the sides underneath, you would just add 1.5 inches and then cut you more of these as spacers. Welcome back, everybody. I started doing some of the pre-editing on this video series, and I realized that I forgot to cover a few things that are pretty important. The handle, the dado handle, the door as far as where I put it, the height. So I'm going to cover those today, but before I do, I want to take a minute here and say, if you're liking this video so far, down below, there's a thumbs up button. If you'll take just a minute here and hit that, hit like, I'd really appreciate it. Next, the reason it's been a few days is we've been sick. The whole family came down with a bug, a flu or cold or something. It was pretty rough. We were able to knock it out in about 4 days, and what was fresh in my mind, for all of you out there, I wanted to tell you what we did to help knock it out. From what we've heard around town, for most people it's been about a 6 to 7 day cold or flu bug or whatever it is. But we were able to get it down to about 4 days and managed it relatively well. It was still a pretty nasty one, but we were able to do that by 3 things mainly. Vitamin C, lots of it. Vitamin D3 in capsules. We were taking anywhere from 5 to 20,000 IUs a day. My kids were taking a little less. And then we were taking mineral supplements that we get from CR supplements. It's just a liquid supplement. This one here is just an example. See if it'll zoom it, clear focus here. This is a zinc. This is just another bottle I had in the house. Zinc is known for functioning a lot of the immune systems in your body, but I just wanted to share this with you guys because we just went through it, and for us this really makes a difference. Anyway, so we'll get back to the main project at hand, and we'll finish up the last few things that we need to do. So I'll get the sauce set up and get ready to go here. So the first thing I like to do after the glue is dried is do my sanding. This is all fairly rough. I like to get these edges all cleaned up, get everything sanded up the best I can, get all the excess glue off. I use a belt sander for that. I don't think I'm going to drag you through the process of sanding. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just sand it. So once I get this box whipped out here sanded, as far as the sander goes, the belt sander is what I prefer, with about a 120 grit sanding pad on it. Sanding belt. You can use an orbit sander, it just takes longer. And I'm all about getting it done quick, and that knocks it off there. And it also, the rougher belt will kind of prep the surface and give the paint or primer something a little better to adhere to. So if you're not looking for a super smooth gloss finish, 120 grit belt, that's all you need to do. So I'll whip that out and we'll come back. Okay, so the next step here, I got the box sanded. The next step is to cut the handle in, the dado handle. It's a simple, effective way of doing handles. This is also a part that can be very dangerous, so I want to warn you of that. So to get into it now, what we need to do is you set your dado blade to the height that you want the depth of your handle. I like to use a 1/2 inch since I'm using 3/4 inch pine. Excuse me. Then I mark the outside edge of where the blade protrudes up, and then I find the center line of the blade. And then what I like to do is measure back from the center line, find the edge of center of box, and then add 1.5 inches to each side. That gives me a little wider handle. Wider handle there. It's easier to just do it. To keep this as safe as possible, on the end that you'll be working on, I like to put a wide surface sticking out. The reason being, I found that when you're dropping your box down onto a spinning blade, the blade likes to kick it like this and kick it out. So the thing that I found that kind of helps save you for getting hurt, is having that wide board sticking out here to help catch that. So I do recommend that you use a wide board here if you're going to do this. In fact, I'm going to move my clamp a little closer here. Help stiffen it up. And then other than that, I'm just going to do this and we'll film it. We'll do both sides. You want to have the frame rest pointing towards the fence. I think I said this, but I use 2 inches from the fence to the inside edge of my blade. That seems to be about right for grabbing the box. I only do the sides, I do not do the ends. So let's get, I need to plug in my saw now and we'll get set up and do this. When you're lowering the box down onto the blade, go very easy and keep the box pressed all the way against your backboard so it doesn't want to kick back too hard. Like I said, this is pretty dangerous, but if you go real nice and easy, it will work pretty good. Then you just slide the box forward so you hit your other block. I like to power down the saw at this point. Let that blade come to a full stop. Lift it up and do the opposite side. That's the the handle you get. Like I said, with the top on there, it just makes, let me set up my top on it. It just feels about right. So let me go ahead and do the opposite side, and then this phase will be done. So there's how you can make handles quick and easy with a table saw and a dado blade. Next we'll move on to the door, or the disc entrance, which I use. So as a reference, this is one of my deep 4-frame boxes. These are the entrance gates that I buy off of eBay. This is the cheapest way I found to get them. They're just plastic. There's nothing special about them, but they work. And for the price, you can't beat them. I got 50 of these little gates. They come in oddball colors, whatever they ship. I happen to get white and green this time. I got 50 of them for $15. So I don't think you can beat that price. As far as the measurements go, from the bottom of the box, not the plywood, but the box, I like to go up about a ½ inch, and then you got your little screw, which is another, if I recall, it was about 3/8 to the center of the screw, and that was 1/4 inch to the center of the screw. So the center of the hole is 1 inch. So find your center of the box here. So 7½ would be 3 3/4. All right. Yeah, 3 3/4. Get a plumb line down. Now this was without the bottom. Measure up 1 inch. Let me verify a number here before I drill holes. So I'll need a hole at 1 inch, which will be and it's a 1 inch diameter hole that I drill. And then 1 3/4 inch, I'll need just a small hole, a pre-drill bit, like 1/16 for the screw. So let me grab the bits and whatnot, and I'll be back. Alright, so I have a 1 inch spade bit on my impact drill driver. We'll just punch this 1 inch hole first. I like to hit it from both sides, that way I don't blow out the back side. Once you punch through and you get that tip sticking through, then you can come in from the opposite side and clean it up. Now we need to use a normal gun here, and I'm using a 3/32 little bit just to pre-drill this hole. That's for that disc entrance. Now I wouldn't necessarily put this on until after it was painted. I probably wouldn't even have drilled these holes until after it was painted. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and show you what I got going here. Alright, so 1 inch hole's drilled, my little hole for the pre-drill bit. I'm just using a small 3/4 inch screw that fits in the factory hole of this disc entrance, and you just screw it on. I mean, it's really that easy. And then you can set the tension with a screwdriver to how tight or whatnot you want it. This particular entrance has the main entrance, a ventilation, and then it almost looks as like maybe it's a queen excluder. It's a very small entrance. I'll just leave it on the main unless I'm traveling, taking the bee somewhere, and then I'll put it on the vent. Your nuke box is now complete. I hope that this video I made here will help you out and get you started in building your own hives and your own boxes and equipment. You can save a lot of money and you can take a lot of pride in building it yourself. So I appreciate your time watching. Again, please hit the like button down below. If you found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.